What is up, everyone? Welcome to another edition of the Superdraft Breakdown Show, brought to you by Rotogrinders. I'm Turd Ferguson. I'm going to be bringing you some of my favorite. No, I had a different promo in my mind there. Lost my train of thought. I'm going to be telling you what to do over on Superdraft. If you haven't signed up already, get signed up. Use promo code Grinders. You get 50 free Superdraft dollars. That's $50 you play through once, and yours. Plus, they'll match your deposit up to $500. That'll drip into your account at a 4% rate. So 50 free dollars, boom, play through that, you're good. And then 4% drip after that. So get signed up. One of my favorite sites. I'm going to be giving you all the information that you need on this show to play over on Superdraft. We've got an interesting little NBA slate and very different format over on Superdraft. No more salary cap. Boom, it's multipliers. So you take however many points the player gets in the game, multiply it by the multiplier, and that's how many points they get over on Superdraft. You can play anyone you want in any lineup, easy 1v1 swaps. Someone gets ruled out. Let's see, there was something that happened the other night. MCW got ruled out, kind of, and then ended up playing, but that's beside the point. But it was an easy swap for me over to Bacon, who ended up with, I think, 80 Superdraft points that night. So makes things way easier. You don't have to be constantly next to your computer the entire time after lock ends up happening, waiting for news to come out. If it does, then you have to scramble, look for 2v2 swaps, look for direct swaps. Everything's a direct swap over on Superdraft. So you just go in there. Let's say that Lowry is questionable tonight. If he gets ruled out, boom, mass swap over to Van Vliet. Don't have Van Vliet in some lineups with Lowry, boom, mass swap over to any other guard that's playing. But it makes it super simple, lots of strategy, lots of different variations you can do. Makes tournaments more fun because you can get some kind of game stacks going. You can get some games that might blow out and stack them up because the multipliers kind of put everyone on close to an even playing field. I have a nice little spreadsheet going right here. You look over at it, all it is RG projections multiplied by the multiplier. So right here, Harden's median projection is 60.55 multiplied by his multiplier is still 60.55 because he's a 1x multiplier. But a guy like De'Aaron Fox around a 45 point multiplier, 1.3x multiplier, boom, he's close to 60. But as you can see, the median projections difference between Harden and the 25th guy, the 45th guy down here is still only 10 points difference, and Harden's going to come in at fairly high ownership. But everyone's kind of on a similar playing field. Different news can come out that makes guys pretty obvious. Cash is a little bit easier right there over on Superdraft, although today it's a little bit tougher. I'm still trying to figure out, and there's going to be news that comes out later today that is going to dictate my cash. But any questions you guys got, just go ahead and drop into the chat. I'll be answering them throughout the course of the show, kind of letting you know my thoughts on everything, kind of letting you know what I'm doing on today's slate, what I'm looking out for as potential news that could change the slate drastically. But any questions you got, anything you want to know about Superdraft strategy, anything you want to know about today's slate, anything you want to know about fast food restaurants and fantastic items at fast food restaurants, I can answer all of them. We'll be going for the next half hour or so, breaking down today's slate. And don't forget to press the like button. Generally don't say that, but I don't know. It makes me feel insecure when we only have like 7 to 10 likes on the show. Just go ahead and press it for my own self-edification. But you get 3 guards, 3 forwards, 1 center. I'll start by breaking down center. And remember, it's a little bit of a mix between DraftKings and FanDuel scoring. 3 points for a block, 3 points for a steal, -1 point for a turnover, just like FanDuel. But 3.5 points for a 3-pointer, 1.5 for assist, 1.25 for a rebound, plus the double-double and triple-double bonus, just like DraftKings. So with the blocks and steals being much higher and with the 3-pointer being much higher, guys that get blocks and steals like Robert Covington and hit 3-pointers like Robert Covington can make his ceiling and his floor so much higher because 3 extra blocks and steals and 2 extra 3-pointers at a 1.75x multiplier is going to be like 30 extra points for you because of the giant disparity or because of the giant variance in those categories and the high multipliers. So occasionally that's things that I kind of look out for, just giving you that reference. But on today's slate, center, 1.2x Vooch looks like my go-to for cash. Like 1.2x is a little bit high. I know they was with Chicago, and I only played 31 minutes the other night. I know it's not the same situation that we got over in Orlando, but 1.2x kind of seems a little bit high for him. I don't know, like, if he'll end up being my center. I'm honestly contemplating him or Cat. Cat obviously getting a matchup versus Brooklyn. Brooklyn, horrible defensively, not great versus bigs, and they run at such a high pace. Cat could end up being my go-to for center. Honestly, Julius Randle could end up being my go-to for center if he ends up playing. But for cash, it's kind of up in the air. As of right now, I have Vooch as my favorite option. After that, tournaments like Plumlee, 1.6x multiplier, can get a lot of things done across the board. Matchup for Toronto, a pretty good matchup for a center. I know those minutes have been kind of up and down. We don't know exactly if he's going to play 30-plus minutes. Stewart's been taking quite a bit, although he did get ejected the other night, and that's why Plumlee likely ended up playing a few more minutes. I'm going to check out his game log. Currently, we have him pegged for 28 minutes. Fournier will make his Celtics debut tonight, just so you know. News just came out. Yeah, last game ended up 26 minutes. Before that, 30, 29, 28. So he's been kind of hovering around that. Not bad minutes amounts. Can absolutely crush in those, but not the best play. We got a question in the chat already. Theo or Moses Brown. On Superdraft, Moses Brown's a 1.25x multiplier. Seems too low. I know he's a guy that crushes on a point per minute basis. I know that he's been getting a decent amount of minutes. I know he's been crushing it just in general. But that multiplier seems a little bit low. I don't know if I'm going to end up using him. Once Robert Williams is probably more of an interesting guy because of all those blocks and steals they ends up getting, but he's at a really low multiplier. So center pricing or multipliers are a little bit too condensed on a lot of these and a little bit too low for guys. Like Gobert can end up crushing, but 1.25x multiplier seems a little low. Same thing with Valanciunas. Porzingis may or may not end up playing. If he does end up playing, always offers you a decent amount of upside. Don't mind using him. Zubac at 1.65x multiplier. Match versus Milwaukee, maybe he gets more run. I wouldn't mind using him in tournaments. Poku is a guy that I think you can use, like 1.8x multiplier. Because of the floor ceiling combo for him, like his minutes might be all over the board here. They will roll out him and Moses Brown at the same time occasionally. SGA out. Horford obviously no longer playing with the team anymore. I think he's just shut down for the season because they're probably going to buy him out. But Pokuševski can end up with a 35-plus point outing. He's been getting 30 to 33 minutes almost every single game, and you have those occasional games where he ends up crushing. So he's a guy that I think you can end up using in tournaments. But for the most part, like I'm using these five guys. I'm using Plumlee, I'm using Cat, I'm using Randall if he ends up playing. I'm using Bam because like everyone else is just all right plays. They're not really great plays. Like you look at the ceilings here, and a lot of these guys' ceilings not terribly high in comparison to the guys up here. But again, like center is probably the easiest, most cut and dry thing for me. I will occasionally throw in some guys in game stacks like Moses Brown. Hope the game stays close. He can still go for a 45-point game at a 1.2x multiplier, 50-point game at 1.2x multiplier, just because he gets so many boards, so many blocks, so many points. Jaylen Brown is out. Really? Did we get that news already? Did I miss that? Sorry, I'm going to check that real quick. I'm not seeing it quite yet. Did I miss it? I've been doing some research right before the show. It says Fournier. Oh, that was 56. Okay, I did not see that. That definitely changes a lot of things for the slate. I'm going to throw in RG's projections if they're updated. I'm going to check right now. Take a sip of coffee. Let's see. Have they updated yet? All right, they've already updated. Let's see what RG has done. Yep. All right, so that makes things interesting. I'm going to throw in RG's projections. Again, this is just their RG DraftKings projections, not exact in terms of scoring because obviously they're a little bit different than they are over on Superdraft. DraftKings doesn't have the blocks and steals, but those are such volatile categories that I'm fine with it and kind of evens out with the turnovers too. So let's see exactly what's going on here. Let's see what Jaylen Brown's projection is at. He might be in the conversation of the top overall option. Brown. Now we still have a projection for Tatum or for Brown, I think. Tatum's did not go up that much. I think it probably should. But Brown's sitting here at 0. So it'll be a little bit interesting. I'm going to check on that throughout the show, see where RG projections throw in. But I think Tatum's probably the cash game guy and probably in regardless. Moderate bump to Robert Williams, although he's not a big usage guy. It's more about playing time for him. Fournier becomes a little bit interesting. I'm going to check Fournier's. So Fournier is at a 1.55x multiplier. He's a little bit interesting, but not great. Like, he's not a great play today. Could go for 35 minutes potentially. I know he hasn't played in like a week because of the trade deadline, or I guess 6 days, 7 days. Yeah, almost a week because of the trade deadline. But Fournier could be in for a decent amount of usage. Marcus Smart gets a bump for sure. He's a guy that can end up playing a bunch of minutes. Kemba now becomes more in play. Kemba's multiplier, I think, is 1.6x. We currently have him projected for a 36 points in this matchup. And his multiplier could end up getting a big upgrade. So let's see. Kemba, 1.4x. Yeah, he's definitely in play for tournaments. I mean, obviously, huge increase in usage. Definitely a guy that I will be playing a decent amount of. Definitely a guy that I will consider in tournaments. Probably not using him in cash, but Tatum, I think, is probably the cash game guy now. Yeah, let's break down forward here. Again, guys, any questions, go ahead and drop into chat. Get signed up using the promo code Grinders. Just have to say that. But cash, as of right now, it's these three guys. I'm not going to be surprised if Paul George or Luka is out of my cash game build, and I'll throw Tatum in. Obviously, his projection right now, right next to them, and I think he's a little bit safer. We see his floor compared to Paul George. I feel like that's a little low. He's going to have to do a bunch here. So Tatum probably going to be my cash game guy instead of Paul George as of this moment right now. Things can change throughout the day. Lots of stuff can come out. But looking at this, Giannis, Luka, Tatum, probably my cash game forwards. Maybe Paul George ends up taking one of them out. Maybe I end up with Kawhi. It wouldn't surprise me with a lot of these. Like Kawhi, obviously, fast-paced match versus Milwaukee. Milwaukee, obviously, a great defensive team, but end up in pretty high-scoring games because of that pace. So I could see going Kawhi. If Lowry is ruled out, I think that OG and potentially Siakam here end up into the cash game mold. But as of right now, it's Giannis, Luka, and Tatum with a chance of OG, with a chance of Siakam both getting into the cash game build. Tournaments, it's a lot more interesting. Kawhi, always a shot at 60 points any given night, 1.2x multiplier. Definitely a guy I'll consider using. OG, again, Lowry ends up getting ruled out. We saw what OG did last night. I think it was 50 fantasy points prior to the multiplier at a 1.65x multiplier that he ended up crushing. He was a necessity for any lineup. I had almost 100% of him last night. Ended up taking down 8th and still making a decent amount of money last night. But OG was a core play. Plumlee, again, if he plays 30 minutes, he can end up with a 45-point outing. Matchup versus Toronto, not a bad matchup for a big. I don't mind Plumlee. Cat match versus Brooklyn, I actually like. Just the multiplier is a little bit low. Still, we'll be using a decent amount in tournaments. He can still end up with a 60-point outing. Ingram, not a guy that I generally like to use. Brown being out is definitely a downgrade for the Boston defense. So an upgrade for Ingram, 1.35x, giving you a nice little ceiling, not a terrible little floor. He's in play for tournaments. I already talked about Bam. Butler, multiplier is a little low. Pretty much need a triple-double out of him, one of his massive 60-point games for him to be a necessity in tournaments. Still, don't mind him, even in a matchup versus New York, who's one of the better defensive teams, one of the I think the slowest paced team in the NBA right now. Holmes, ever since Bagley's gone down, been playing a boatload of minutes, so he stays out of foul trouble. A matchup versus San Antonio, obviously a good one. Don't mind him. Barrett could be potentially one of the best plays on the entire slate. Randall, I believe, is still questionable right now. If he ends up missing, Barrett's pretty much just lock and load, potentially in the cash game conversation. He's just going to get a huge usage uptick. Last game, I think he ended up with, 46 points? Him and Burks were playing 40 minutes and taking up all the usage. So Barrett's definitely a guy that I'll be looking at in tournaments regardless, but specifically, he's going to be a mainstay in my tournament teams if Randall ends up getting ruled out. Again, early on in the day, we don't know, but I think this is the first game on the slate. Just so you know, Superdraft doesn't start at the same time as FanDuel and DraftKings. That Indiana versus Washington game, they just took it off the slate. They're giving you an extra half hour to wait for news to come in. Very advantageous for basketball because obviously they like to just throw news at us and piss off all of us several minutes after lock and make us change everything. And it's way easier to change everything over on Superdraft. Again, you can mass player swap. Everyone's a 1v1 swap. You don't have to worry about things. Generally, if someone gets ruled out, if Kyrie gets ruled out, boom, you throw everything over to Harden. It's real easy. No salary cap, so makes everything pretty cut and dry when it comes to swapping. But Barrett, definitely a guy I'll use a ton. DeMar DeRozan, he's fine. I mean, with Almea gone, with everything going on here, DeRozan 1.3x multiplier, not great, not terrible. Can end up with a 50-point outing. Zion been crushing recently. Zion is just he's a superstar right now. Gives you more of a floor than a ceiling, but he will occasionally give you like a 55-point game, 60-point game. The last two games, 51 and 65. So he definitely has some upside. Hasn't gotten less than 40. He's a guy that I don't think gives you tournament winning upside a lot, but it's a matchup versus Boston, who's a little bit shorthanded. Robert Williams will get a little handsy with him. 1.15x multiplier, not great, but he's going to give you that 45, 50-point floor, which is what you want. And he's going to give you a pretty high ceiling. Not the highest on the slate. He's not going to give you 100 points, but he gives you a pretty decent ceiling. So he's a guy that I'll definitely be using a decent amount. Siakam, again, right now, just a decent play. If Lowry ends up getting ruled out, or Pascal becomes a core play. Jeremy Grant been pretty up and down so far this season. Been getting a lot of usage recently. Matchup versus Toronto is a decent one, obviously better on defense than they were when they had all their players out. But Grant can give you 55 points, 50 points in any given matchup. I don't mind using him. He's not right up at the top, but he's definitely a guy I'll sprinkle into tournaments. Sprinkle in a lot with game stacks, especially if Lowry ends up missing. I expect this game to stay closer. So he's a guy that I want to play if they're going to be in a very close game. So again, Lowry's out. I'm probably bringing back my Siakam and OG and Van Vliet lineups with Jeremy Grant, with Plumlee, just because they can get it done. If this game stays close, they're more likely to. Randall, 1.2x, not great. Real simple. It's just not a great multiplier, but he has 60-point upside. Like, he does so much. Again, we're not sure if he's going to end up playing. If he ends up playing, I wouldn't be surprised if he goes into the cash game conversation, especially if Lowry ends up playing too, like depending on where things go. I wouldn't mind playing him over a guy like Paul George, where you're getting a pretty high floor. I mean, last time Randall had under 30 points outside of the game versus Washington was all the way back at the beginning of whatever it was called, March, right after the All-Star break. So Randall plays so many minutes. He is so involved in this offense. He does get so many peripheral stats. They offers you a pretty high floor. I don't mind him in cash. I don't mind him in tournaments at all. So Hell took second place on Saturday, won 7-50, finished top 30 last night. Congrats, Michael. That's a pretty good takedown. Second place over on Superdraft is still, I think, depending on the night, depending on the contest, 1.5 to 2.5K. Solid takedown. Congrats. Outside that, Christian Wood is fine if he ends up playing. Not huge on him. He always offers a decent ceiling, but I'm always worried about his minutes. Houston's obviously trying to tank. Houston has no reason to play him for a ton of minutes. So Christian Wood's an all right play. The multiplier is just a little low. Levine with Vooch in there, going to take a big downtick to his usage. Again, the guy can go off for 60 any given night. Fast-paced matchup versus Golden State. Third fastest paced team in the league, I still believe right now. Not great defensively. I don't mind Levine. Outside of that, Middleton with Giannis playing, probably not going there. Kristaps might not play. If he does, he's still in play for tournaments because he does offer you that huge ceiling. Had a 55, 60-point game the other night, a 1.3 XL crush. Hardenstein, like, I haven't looked into him a ton, but he's interesting at a 2x multiplier. So with obviously Jared Allen still being out, Drummond obviously gone and has been out for a while, with Kevin Love out, he's going to probably be coming off the bench. They'll likely put Nance in at the 5. If he ends up playing, he's definitely interesting. So he could get 20 minutes. He could not get 20 minutes. Like, his minutes are all over the board, but they're going to need him a little bit. If he ends up playing, then you can use him just because of that huge multiplier. Like, he obviously has a massive ceiling. Every single block, every single steal is 6 points because of the 2x multiplier. So he's a guy that you can definitely consider. Even Nance. I wonder what Nance's projection is at. Larry Nance, 1.55x multiplier. That's a little low, but he's still in play in tournaments. Same thing with a guy like Dylan Brooks. Low floor, high ceiling guys. they're all fine. Like Jerome can end up with a decent amount of minutes without SGA, without all those guys in there. Don't hate him at 1.9x multiplier, but most of these guys are just kind of out of play because their multipliers are not high enough. Like obviously Claxton, with all the bodies they have now, I know Elme is not playing it, but they have Griffin, they have Jordan. Claxton's minutes are kind of all over the place. He's a decent play at this high multiplier, but I'm generally waiting for another guy like Kyrie to be out before I'm really considering playing him, or Jordan. Everyone else, like obviously with Steph coming back, don't know if I really have any interest in Wiggins. All these guys are kind of just out of play for me. Let's move on over to guard here. Definitely a lot of interesting plays. Again, this is a huge slate, so ownership's going to condense pretty heavily on guys like Harden, Fox, Curry. Like my guess is most of them, Curry and Fox probably end up at around 60% ownership. Harden ends up at around 50 would be my guess. Like obviously it's very volatile. Anything can happen, but that's kind of my guess as of right now. So fading up or pivoting off of them in tournaments, pretty decent idea. I know that Curry can end up with a massive game any night. Same thing with Fox, same thing with Harden. But Harden also going up against Minnesota. Minnesota's terrible. Can absolutely end up with a blowout. Kyrie can take over. Harden can end up with a 40-point outing, which any lineup with Harden, likely dead in tournaments. Like you're not dead as in you can't cash, but likely out of the first place conversation in tournaments. So fading, like while I want to lock him in cash, fading Harden in tournaments, not the worst idea. Fading Fox in tournaments, not the worst idea. Fading Curry in tournaments, I don't think is a horrible idea if you're not bringing it back with Vooch. So like anytime you're playing Vooch, the main reason Curry would end up with a not tournament winning score is going to be if the game doesn't stay close. So because Vooch and Levine are both good bringbacks, a lot of lineups where I'm using Curry, I'm going to bring it back with one of those guys just because I'm expecting that game to be close. I know Curry is going to be very heavily owned. So that's kind of my plan there. Kyrie, great pivot, great leverage off of Harden. Going to come in a decent amount less ownership would be my guess. 1.25x. He can have a massive game any given night. Colin Sexton, not an easy matchup versus Utah. Don't know how much I'll end up using him. If I do use him, I want to bring it back with Gobert or I want to bring it back with Mitchell. It's just that simple. Like I'm not a huge fan of those plays in a vacuum, but when using Sexton, makes them a little bit more advantageous because again, I'm expecting this game to be a blow. Can't remember off the top of my head what the spread was for this game, but I'm guessing it was fairly high. I'm going to double check it here. Opening up the DK Sportsbook. Gosh, I love being in a legal gambling state. It's fantastic. Highly suggest uprooting your life and moving somewhere for it. Just kidding. Be responsible. Unless you want to come out to Colorado. Colorado is a beautiful place. Absolutely beautiful. My favorite state I've ever lived in. Granted, there's only been 4, and California was one of them. Definitely not a huge fan of that place anymore. But yeah, the Jazz are 16-point favorites. So Sexton's fine. I would not suggest playing him unless you bring it back with Mitchell or bring it back with Gobert. Bring it back with anyone like that. So Sexton, 1.5, big multiplier, but I would not use him unless you're using a Utah guy on the other end. Moving on down, Malden, 1.75x without SGA, without Horford, without all these guys in there. Going to play a boatload of minutes, especially I would mostly play him if Dort doesn't end up playing, but going to play a boatload of minutes, going to get a decent amount of usage. Absolutely love Malden as a play today at a 1.75x multiplier. I'll be using him a decent amount, but again, I'm generally bringing it back with someone else if I'm going to use him. Van Vliet, more in play if Lowry ends up missing. If Lowry ends up missing, Van Vliet becomes an elite play. Not quite a cash game guy because I love Harden, I love Fox, I love Curry, but you could make the argument for playing him in cash, but tournament's absolutely fantastic play. Kemba, again, without Jaylen Brown in the game, usage going to go up pretty heavily. 1.4x multiplier, way too high here. Absolutely love Kemba as a play without Brown in here now. DeRozan, already talked about. Garland, don't mind him, but again, you have to bring it back with Mitchell or someone because I'm worried about this game blowing out. And one of the main reasons we love Garland, he takes a decent amount of shot, but he plays a boatload of minutes in close game. Buddy Hyde here. Always can get hot, 1.6x multiplier. Good matchup versus San Antonio. Don't mind him. John Wall, multiplier is just coming down far too much. And 2 guys I forgot to talk about. Ja Morant, always a chance at a 60-point game. Absolutely love him every single night. Occasionally, he will destroy me, but it's a matchup versus Houston. Houston is absolutely terrible, running at a pretty heavy pace, and Morant hasn't been doing great recently because he hasn't been shooting the ball great. But absolutely love him today. Like coming off a 18-point game against Utah, but had a 55-point game before that, 34, 48. 1.4x is far too high. Morant's probably my favorite tournament play on the board today, but just know I say that a lot, and I'm worried about the game being a blowout. But absolutely love Morant. Tatum, again, he's probably in the cash game conversation now. He's probably my cash game forward because, again, I as of right now, I really want to play Fox, really want to play Curry, really want to play Harden and cash. And I probably plan on doing that. Only thing that could possibly change is Van Vliet entering the conversation. But as of right now, I'm probably playing one of those guys because they offer such a safe floor and such a safe ceiling and they're just consistent and they're far too underpriced. I mean, Harden's at a 1x, but he's still underpriced because he's James Harden and he's going to get a triple-double almost every single night. Outside of that, Levine, I already talked about him. DeJounte Murray, guys, any questions you have, we're going to be getting out of here in a few minutes. So throw them into chat and I'll get to them before the end of the show if you drop them in quick enough. DeJounte Murray, 1.45x multiplier, always in play in tournaments. Spurs, I absolutely hate him. I love him, but I hate him for fantasy because you never know what's going to end up happening. I mean, I'm going to pull up DeJounte Murray's game log. So 39.5 in each of the last two. Wow, that's surprising. 28, 26, 33, 27, 42, 24, 36, all over the place. Not consistent at all. The guy's a superstar, and he can end up with a ton of steals in any given matchup. But you just can't trust it. So tournaments, I'm fine with bringing him back if you're playing Holmes or you're playing Fox or you're playing any of the guys over on Sacramento. Outside of that, we look like Lonzo Ball. Hasn't been playing a ton recently. Almost got moved, so maybe with him back now. Again, always a guy that can get a triple-double. If he ends up playing, he's a guy that's potentially in play. If not, Neil Alexander-Walker is definitely a guy that's into playing. He's been playing pretty well recently. Alec Burks, 1.75x multiplier. If Randall's out, love Burks. Absolutely love him. Anthony Edwards, his multiplier keeps coming down, but matchup versus Brooklyn, definitely a guy you can end up playing even at 1.3x. Halliburton, never a guy that I mind playing, getting a boatload of minutes. Good matchup versus San Antonio. Good bring back. Marcus Smart, now that, Jaylen Brown is out. Don't mind playing him. Matchup versus New Orleans, good. Lowry always been playing tournaments if he ends up playing, but he's not great. There's better plays. If Butler, for some reason, gets ruled out, you can play Hero. Fournier will enter the starting lineup. If you really want to play him, he can obviously get hot shooting, but not a guy that I really plan on playing too much. But that's pretty much it. That's today's Superdraft slate. Question in chat, any interest for Gobert in tournaments? Not really. His multiplier is too low, 1.25x. He's fine. He can definitely end up with a massive night, but that game's a 16-point spread. Only reason I end up playing him if I'm bringing it back with Garland or Sexton or Nance or something like that over on the other side. But the majority of the time, that game's going to be a blowout. That's just what Utah's been doing. That's what they consistently do. So Gobert, while he offers you a pretty decent ceiling if the game stays close, I don't expect that game to stay close. So I'm predominantly staying away from him. But there's a lot of variance in that, and there's not a ton of centers to play. So if you want to play Gobert for tournaments, I just suggest bringing it back with Sexton or Garland or Nance. Let's see. I'm going to turn 120 of my bonus into 190 in real money playing beginner contests. Always a smart move. Always play beginner contests until you can't play anymore. Yeah, guys, get signed up. Play in beginner contests. You already got a leg up on everyone else in the beginning contest because of all the information I gave you. You know exactly what to do. Any cash game contest, boom. Just throw in Harden, throw in Fox, throw in Curry, throw in Tatum, throw in Vooch, Cat if you really want to, throw in Giannis, and then throw in Luka or throw in George, and boom, you got your cash game lineup there, barring if Lowry gets ruled out, you throw in OG or throw in Siakam. And if Randall's ruled out, you could potentially throw in Barrett into your cash game. So I already told you what to do. So go ahead, get into those beginner cash games, get signed up using promo code Grinders, get the free $50, plus get the free deposit bonus. But that's it, basically. That's the show, guys. Hope you enjoyed it. Good luck on your tournaments tonight. I don't know if we're going to be doing this for baseball, but gosh, I'm excited for baseball season. Baseball is a lot of fun over on Superdraft. It's a ton of fun over there. Loved it. I've taken down probably 10 of their smaller tournaments where it was just $1,000 to first because they're still just building up the product, but I'm sure that they're going to have some decent contests out there this year. I'm excited for opening day. Do they have baseball in their lobby yet? I haven't checked yet. Let's see. MLB. Ooh, this is an exciting moment. Don't have any. Yeah. Oh, it's still on, what's it called? Spring training. I'm excited for baseball. Gosh, I'm excited. I love baseball season. Probably still to be doing NBA and baseball. Going to be a busy month in April till the NBA playoffs start up, but I'm out of here. It's been fun. Good luck tonight. See you, kids.